You walk into a sneaker store, eyes locked on the massive Nike display. Maybe you're here for a specific model, maybe you're just browsing. But somehow, your brain already knows what it wants. The swoosh. The brand that makes you feel like a champion before you even put the shoes on. You pick them up, feel the texture, admire the design. Maybe you don't even check the price tag. You don't need to. Because somewhere along the way, Nike already convinced you that these shoes are worth it. But here's the real kicker. Nike didn't just sell you a shoe. They sold you an identity. And you never even realized it. This isn't just marketing, it's mind control. A psychological playbook that took a struggling shoe company and turned it into a $200 billion empire. One that doesn't just sell sneakers, it sells status, exclusivity, rebellion, and even purpose. And the craziest part? You thought it was your choice all along. So, how did Nike rewire your brain? How did they turn sneakers into symbols of power? And are you really making the choice? Or has the choice already been made for you? Before Nike became a global empire, it was just an idea that started with a track coach, a college runner, and a waffle iron. In the 1960s, Adidas and Puma were already dominating the sports world. If you were an athlete, you wore one of those brands. Nike? It didn't even exist yet. At the time, Phil Knight was just a former track athlete with a crazy theory. What if Japanese sneakers could compete with the Germans? Knight pitched the idea to Onitsuka Tiger, a small Japanese brand, convincing them to let him sell their shoes in the US. He had no company, no warehouse, just a dream, and a handful of orders he had no idea how to fulfill. So, he created a company name on the spot, Blue Ribbon Sports. That was Nike's first identity. And it wasn't even Nike. Meanwhile, Knight's old track coach, Bill Bowerman, was obsessed with one thing, making runners faster. He didn't just coach them, he engineered their shoes. One day, he poured rubber into a waffle iron, creating a new kind of lightweight, grippy sole. That waffle iron mistake would become Nike's first breakthrough. But even with better shoes, they were nobodies in the sneaker game. The industry was owned by giants, brands with history, athletes, and billion-dollar marketing machines. Nike had no money, no influence, no recognition. But they had one thing Adidas and Puma didn't. They knew how to hack your brain, and they were about to change everything. Nike figured something out that would change everything. They weren't just selling shoes. They were selling you, your potential, your ambition, your future. In the early days, Nike wasn't the best at making shoes. Their early models were functional, sure, but they weren't revolutionizing the industry through technology. Adidas had the cutting-edge sportswear. Puma had history. But Nike had something more powerful than performance: perception. They realized that people don't buy products, they buy identity. And once they owned that, they owned you. Nike started crafting stories, not about sneakers, but about heroes. Michael Jordan wasn't just a basketball player, he was a god. And Nike made sure you saw him that way. When they signed him in 1984, he was just a rookie. But Nike built his legend. The Air Jordan 1 wasn't just a shoe, it was rebellion. The NBA banned them, Jordan wore them anyway, and Nike turned that moment into one of the most brilliant marketing campaigns ever. They weren't telling you, these shoes will make you jump higher. They were telling you, these shoes will make you like Mike. And who didn't want that? From there, Nike perfected the formula. Every athlete they signed, Serena Williams, Cristiano Ronaldo, Kobe Bryant, wasn't just an endorser. They were a symbol. Nike wasn't selling you sneakers. They were selling you a dream. But storytelling alone wasn't enough. Nike needed you to feel like you were part of something exclusive. And so they introduced the fear of missing out. Nike doesn't just release shoes. They create events. Limited editions, one-time drops, special collaborations. Every release is a spectacle. The moment Nike tells you a shoe is limited, it's already a success. They don't even need to advertise it. The customers do the work for them. Think about it. When was the last time you saw a commercial for a new Air Jordan release? Exactly. They don't need to run ads. They just drop a teaser, let influencers hype it, and suddenly, people are camping outside stores for days. The result? Hype, scarcity. The idea that if you don't get this shoe now, you'll never get it. And people eat it up. The resale market for Nike sneakers is worth billions. There are entire economies built around buying and flipping Nikes. But here's the crazy part. Nike knows this, and they let it happen. Because every time a shoe resells for $1,000, it only reinforces the brand's power. But the real genius? Nike makes you feel like you're in control. They don't shove ads in your face screaming, "Buy our shoes." Instead, they make you feel something. Nike's marketing isn't about products, it's about emotions. Watch a Nike ad. It doesn't tell you about shoe technology. It doesn't list features. Instead, it shows an underdog struggling, failing, then rising to victory. It makes you feel like you are that person. "Just do it" isn't a slogan, it's a challenge. It doesn't say, "Buy Nike." It says, "Prove something to yourself." And in that moment, you believe that maybe, just maybe, this pair of sneakers will be the thing that gets you there. And just like that, you're hooked. But Nike didn't stop there. They took their psychological playbook and weaponized it. They made buying their products a lifestyle, a necessity. They made sure that owning a pair of Nikes wasn't just an option, it was a statement. And now, decades later, they're more than just a brand. They're a religion, and you never even realized you were part of it. Nike built an empire on emotion, identity, and exclusivity. But what happens when you start looking past the ads and into the reality of the brand? That's when you realize that Nike's mind control doesn't just make you buy shoes, it makes you ignore everything else. Let's start with the sneaker chaos Nike created on purpose. You've probably seen the videos. People trampling each other to get their hands on the latest Air Jordans. Lines forming outside stores days before a release. A single pair of sneakers selling for 10 times the retail price on resale platforms. This isn't a side effect of demand. It's a carefully designed strategy. Nike manufactures scarcity, controlling the supply chain so that even if they know millions want a shoe, they only release a fraction of that number. Why, you ask? Because they're not selling shoes anymore. They're selling status. If anyone could get a pair of Travis Scott Jordans or Off-White Air Force Ones, they wouldn't be special. But when you make them impossible to buy, you create hype. People don't just want them, they're willing to fight for them. And Nike knows that. They fuel it. Because the more exclusive something feels, the more people want it. It's artificial scarcity at its finest. And it gets even worse. The resale market for Nike sneakers is a billion-dollar industry, but guess who profits the most? Not the people flipping shoes. Nike profits, because every time you see a sneaker resell for $1,000, it reinforces one thing in your brain. Nike shoes are valuable. It doesn't even matter if they're actually better than other sneakers. You've been conditioned to believe they are. And yet, for all the hype, Nike has spent decades lying about performance. From the beginning, Nike's message was clear. Our shoes make you faster, stronger, better. That's the entire premise behind their marketing. They didn't just sell you sneakers, they sold you the promise of athletic superiority. And for a while, people believed it. Because when you see Michael Jordan flying across the court, Serena Williams dominating the game, and Ronaldo scoring impossible goals, all in Nike gear, you start to believe there's something special about these shoes. But here's the truth. Most of it is marketing hype. Studies have shown that for the average person, Nike's so-called game-changing technologies barely make a difference. Sure, Nike's Vaporfly running shoes gave marathon runners an edge with carbon fiber plates. But let's be real. How many of Nike's customers are elite marathoners? The rest of their lineup? You're paying for the brand. You could buy a $60 sneaker that performs just as well as a $200 Nike shoe, but by the time you realize that, you already own 5 pairs of Nikes, because the brand got you before logic ever could. But Nike's biggest problem isn't just how they manipulate customers, it's how they operate behind the scenes. Nike's been caught again and again exploiting workers in sweatshops across Asia. Their factories in Indonesia, Vietnam, and China have been exposed for horrific working conditions, low wages, and even child labor. Reports have detailed how some workers earn as little as a few dollars a day, the same amount you'd spend on a Starbucks coffee, while producing shoes that sell for hundreds. And yet, every time a scandal hits, Nike survives. How? Because Nike is a master of PR. They pivot, they rebrand, they launch campaigns about social justice, equality, and empowerment. They put out commercials featuring Colin Kaepernick taking a stand. They donate to causes. They make you feel like buying their shoes is somehow supporting the right side of history. And people fall for it. Nike has figured out something powerful. As long as you believe they're a force for good, you'll ignore the bad. They've weaponized emotions so effectively that even when they're exposed for exploiting workers, people still proudly wear their sneakers. even when they create artificial scarcity that fuels violence and sneaker riots. People still camp outside stores. Even when they manipulate you into paying more for a logo, you still believe it's worth it. And that's the scariest part. Nike's power isn't just in its branding, it's in how deeply they've embedded themselves into culture, sports, and identity. They've reached a level where they don't need to convince you to buy their products anymore. You already want them, and by the time you realize you've been conditioned to want them, it's already too late. At this point, you'd think Nike's empire would have cracked under the weight of its own controversies. The sneaker riots, the artificial scarcity, the overpriced products, the sweatshop scandals, any other company would have crumbled. But Nike, they're bigger than ever. They've built something more than a brand. They've built a belief system. People don't just wear Nikes, they identify with them. They get the swoosh tattooed on their bodies as if it's a symbol of personal triumph. The shoes themselves, they've transcended footwear. Air Jordans are now investment assets. Limited edition releases are treated like gold. Nike has somehow made sneakers into art, wealth, and social status, all at the same time. They didn't just win the sneaker war, they became the sneaker war. And here's the wildest part. They're only getting stronger, because as long as people crave success, status, and identity, Nike will always have something to sell. Nike's most famous slogan, "Just do it," sounds like the ultimate motivational mantra. It's inspired millions to push their limits, chase their dreams, and take action. But here's something you probably didn't know. Those 3 words were inspired by a convicted murderer's last words before his execution. In 1977, Gary Gilmore, a notorious criminal sentenced to death, was asked for his final statement before facing the firing squad. His response? "Let's do it." Years later, Nike's ad team took that eerie phrase, gave it a slight twist, and turned it into one of the most powerful marketing slogans in history. Who knew that one of the most iconic phrases in sports culture was born from a moment of death? Nike has played this game for decades, and so far, they've always won. They've survived scandals, lawsuits, and industry shifts. They've turned sneakers into status symbols, limited supply into hype machines, and marketing into mind control. But the real question is, how much longer can it last? Gen Z is different. They don't just buy products, they question them. They're skeptical of traditional advertising. They demand transparency. And most importantly, they care about ethics in ways previous generations didn't. For a company that has spent decades dodging accountability, this could be Nike's biggest challenge yet. Will Nike adapt, just like they always have? Or will the next generation finally see through the playbook? If people stop buying into the illusion, does Nike's empire start to crack? Or maybe, it doesn't matter. Maybe Nike is so deeply ingrained in culture that no controversy, no backlash, no shift in consumer behavior can ever break its grip on society. So, what do you think? Is Nike truly unstoppable, or are we finally witnessing the beginning of the end? Let me know in the comments, because this story is far from over. Nike's story is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Every powerful brand you know is using psychology, manipulation, and influence to keep you hooked. But who's doing it best? Should we uncover how Apple made you addicted to their ecosystem? How McDonald's turned fast food into a real estate empire? Or how Boeing's airline monopoly shaped the skies? Drop your vote in the comments, because you decide what we expose next. And if you love deep dives into the hidden strategies of the world's biggest brands, hit that subscribe button now, because trust me, the rabbit hole goes even deeper. And always remember, think big, act bold, and I'll see you at the next one.